I'm Veronica Lambert, and I'm the co-lead for the PPI Ignite Network here at Dublin City University. I'm delighted to welcome you here this morning to DCU St. Patrick's campus to our hybrid event, both in person and online. On behalf of the PPI Ignite Network at DCU and the PPI Ignite National Office hosted at the University of Galway as joint coordinators of this festival. Building on the success of last year's inaugural festival, this second National PPI Festival takes place over the month of October, where a spotlight will be shining on public and patient involvement with the ambition of showcasing and celebrating the incredible progress on amplifying public and patient voices in health and social care research across the island of Ireland. With the month ahead, I think we have at the moment over 40 wide-ranging events hosted by universities, patient organisations, public agencies and charities, uniting us all as equals to champion a shift towards greater public involvement in research that makes a difference, that enhances the quality of research and that minimises research waste, by giving everybody a voice in research decisions that may impact us all. Collectively, the festival will provide opportunities to foster existing relationships, broaden the reach of connectivity across communities not currently involved, enhance overall awareness of public and patient involvement, and allow for creative spaces for innovation in health and social care research. So to set the scene for the month, as we launch the National PPI Ignite Festival today, we're very much looking forward to keynote contributions from Deputy Róisín Shortall TD on placing people at the heart by elevating patient and public voices in healthcare transformation, and Dr. Sarah McLoughlin from Cancer Trials Ireland on bringing science and experience together, a personal journey through PPI. Then through facilitated discussions on the balance of collaborations, today's event will explore the dynamics of public-patient involvement relationships, and it'll pave the way for a month of activities promoting collaborative, public responsive health research. We will also see the official launch of a new guide entitled Charities and Researchers Partnering for Social Benefit. And we'll hear from Dr. Anne Cody on the Health Research Board strategy and the road ahead in setting the future path for PPI in health and social care research. We hope today's launch will be the start of igniting celebrations to come over this month of October. And we encourage you all to explore the event calendar and the PPI network events ppinetwork.ie/events_calendar. And you will see a wide depth of events, many with innovative and creative approaches to engage diverse audience and to promote public and patient involvement, including emphasising the importance of equity, diversity, inclusion, and maximising accessibility. You can also follow the National PPI Ignite Network on social media for live updates, and if posting, we encourage you to use the hashtag PPI Festival 2023. Finally, I would like to extend a big thank you to Dr. Owen Scott, the Programme Manager for the DCU PPI Ignite Network, for all the behind-the-scenes work that went into organising today, along with Adele Murphy from the PPI Ignite National Network Office. To acknowledge our funders, the Health Research Board, the Irish Research Council, and co-contributed funding from the 7 university lead sites. Without further ado, I would now like to extend a warm welcome to Professor Derek Yeo, the President of Dublin City University, to deliver a welcome address on the launch of our festival.
Thank you very much, Veronica, for your warm welcome to the group. And on behalf of the university, I'd like to extend a welcome to everybody physically here in the room and people who are joining in remotely. For those of you who are not in the room, you're deprived of the beauty of this room, that this room is from the 1740s and the oldest part, Belvedere House. So the room that you've come from, the front half of it was 1660s, 1680s. So the panelling and the doors are all from that period. And then this room was built as a ballroom by this man in the 1740s. And the house was called Belvedere House because at that point it had a magnificent view down over the city and out over Dublin Bay. So this is our friend Singleton. So little did Singleton think that in October 2023 that we'd have a group like yourselves gathered to discuss some notion of PPI. I wonder if people in the 18th century had any idea of that kind of partnership for improved outcomes in research for all. But it is interesting to think that the differences that we make will impact on the future as well. But it's great to see representatives from all of the partners in the room here today, from the public. We've got patients, researchers, and charities. It's particularly important that we acknowledge the presence of our funders, the people who make it all possible. And I'd especially like to thank the Health Research Board, the HRB, and the Irish Research Council. A warm welcome, especially to our keynote speakers today, Deputy Róisín Shortall, who a local, who will address us shortly, and to Dr. Sarah McLoughlin. The discussion today and the focus is part of a national upsurge in the involvement of the public, patients, and the community, all together shaping research as research partners. And I think that point, as Veronica said in the introduction, is the crucial difference in what you do and what others have done before, in that everybody has a voice in this work. And that voice and agency is particularly important. And it's a place where the public, where patients are put at the heart of the research, not as subjects of research, not as beneficiaries, but as active contributors. And that's hugely important. And I think that you can miss the novelty and the importance of that. So it's worth having a festival like this to call that out, to celebrate what has been achieved, and to set yourself up for what's ahead. Obviously, at the university, as award winners, we're particularly pleased to be here today. But it is true for us that the values of the PPI network are aligned with ours at the university, that we are a public university dedicated to the public good, and our mission is to transform lives and societies. And above all, we are people-focused. We have people at the centre, and that, of course, is your purpose. And together, these partnerships between the universities and all the stakeholders are particularly important and significant. So again, I'd just like to thank everybody who has put this festival together. I'd like to thank Professor Sean Deneen, who's the leader of the PPI Ignite Network. I'd like to thank Adele Murphy, who's the National Programme Manager of the network. I'd like to thank our own Professor Veronica Lambert, who's co-lead of the network here at DCU. And I'd especially like to thank Dr. Amanda Drury, who's co-lead the network again at DCU. So listen, everybody, have a wonderful day today. And we look forward not just to today, but for the whole kind of festival month ahead. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Keogh, for that. I'm just going to hand over to Martha now, who is our MC for the day.
Thank you very much, President Keogh. Hi, everyone. As Veronica said, I'm Martha, the MC for the day. Delighted to be here and honoured to introduce Deputy Róisín Shortall, who will be delivering a keynote speech for us today on elevating the patient and public voice in healthcare transformation. As I'm sure you're all aware, Deputy Shortall has really influenced and ignited the patient and public community within her work in politics as well as social justice. So we're honoured to have you with us today. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Martha, and good morning, everyone here in the room and joining us remotely. I was really pleased to be contacted by Owen Scott a couple of months ago to ask me to participate in this event. And as the local, as Dara has said, I'm really pleased that DCU is the college hosting the event this year. I'm very proud of DCU as a local college that has, really that has really kind of located itself at the centre of the community here on the north side of Dublin. It is a hugely important organisation on this side of the city, and it has facilitated, extraordinary academic work in this area that, it is recognised, I think, right across the world. I'm delighted to have two graduates of DCU in my own family, and as a representative for the area, I really value the enormous contribution that DCU makes, and the fact that it is so inclusive also. And I think this has always been the hallmark of DCU, that it sees itself as a critical part of the community, but also with international standards. And I know that right across the north side of Dublin, people are really proud of what DCU has become. So I'm very glad to be here at a DCU event. And I'm very happy to participate in the launch of the second PPI Ignite Festival. And by all accounts, I think last year's festival was regarded as really successful, the inaugural event. And I certainly hope that this year's event will even surpass the success of last year. So I very much welcome the objectives of the PPI Ignite initiative by the research community in our universities. I think it's an extraordinarily important development. The aim of providing a shared voice for PPI and to thereby change the culture of research is an extremely worthy objective. This festival is an important opportunity for the network to explore the endless potential for collaboration with those who are served by the health service. And increasingly, we're recognizing the importance of all of the partners in the health service, those who provide the research, those who provide the frontline services, those who receive the services, and those who are policymakers working in collaboration to improve the service for the public. And that is, at the end of the day, what this is all about. It's also a great opportunity to share ideas and to learn from best practice in research in terms of PPI as that evolves. Important topics and discussions will take place undoubtedly at this festival, highlighting the profound impact of involving patients and the public in healthcare research and decision-making. Our healthcare systems exist to serve individuals, families and communities. And if the positive potential of those systems is to be realised, then they must be rooted in the aspirations, the values and the traditions of those families and communities. The paternalism of previous times has certainly waned, and we think it still has a bit to go in relation to that old idea of doctor knows best, where things were done to you rather than with you, where decisions were made about you rather than with you. That's certainly on the wane, and that's a very welcome development. The doctor-patient relationship has generally been reframed. Patients in the main are well informed, and many understand the importance of playing an active role in the achievement and maintenance of their own good health and well-being. Healthcare is now much more of a partnership between healthcare professionals and patients that must involve an open and candid relationship where both work together to achieve good health and well-being outcomes. Understanding where the patient is coming from and the challenges in their lives is central to that relationship. We're also becoming, I think, much more aware of the social determinants of health. There's a greater understanding of the need to support patients in dealing with the sometimes myriad social issues which they face, as well as the need, of course, to address those social issues at societal level. It is especially important that cultural norms, financial pressures, and competing demands are appreciated in, for example, designing health promotion programs. Healthy eating, as one area that's really important, may not be a realistic option for very poor families if money is tight and food available locally is very expensive. So other strategies need to be employed. Self-care can also be difficult in these circumstances, and other supports may be more of a priority. This in turn, of course, underscores the need for a multidisciplinary approach to health and social care, especially at primary care level. And we're still some way off that. There's no doubt that GPs play a very, very central role in primary care, but ideally they should be the gatekeepers to a whole range of other primary care supports. And, you know, we still have a lot of ground to make up in that regard. One of my own hobby horses is the absence of adequate workforce planning. So we found ourselves in recent years with having funding for additional services, the recognition of the important role played by nurses, by therapists generally. And yet, while money is provided, there's major difficulties in recruiting people. And, you know, it is an unusual situation to be in where money is provided, but we can't get the staff, and that's what's holding the services back. And much more work needs to be done in terms of workforce planning. As we progress crucial healthcare reform, and thankfully that is underway. It may not be going at the speed that we'd all like to see, but certainly we're going in the right direction. It is, of course, paramount that we place patients and the public at the very heart of our deliberations. So then, in terms of lessons being learned in frontline health services, it's equally important, of course, that those lessons are learned in the research world, and I think that is essentially what the network is about. Progress in patient and public involvement in research is absolutely critical, as you all recognise. The evidence overwhelmingly supports that involving patients and the public throughout the healthcare continuum not only improves processes and outcomes, but also uncovers invaluable insights that might otherwise remain hidden. Hearing the patient's voice directly can provide a powerful insight into the reality of people's lives, sometimes confounding our own received wisdom or our intuition. We all come to our work with set views very often, coming from our own perspective in particular. And very often, you know, the key to having high quality services, ensuring that we're actually meeting people's needs, is having that open-minded approach and realizing that what we believe is not necessarily representative of what other people believe, and having that open-mindedness and a willingness to, you know, see the world from the patient's perspective, which might be a very, very different perspective to our own. In the past decade, we've witnessed, I think, significant strides in the engagement of patients and the public in research. And one example that springs to mind in relation to that is the example of UCD and the work that they did on traveller health. And I've seen in my own constituency firsthand, where we have a very large number of traveller residents, the difference that that has made to people's lives, working directly with travellers, understanding the cultural issues associated with the travelling community, and working very closely with community leaders in that community in getting across the message of good healthcare and the importance of participating in, you know, things like screening programs and that kind of thing. So that work really is, we're seeing huge progress being made as a result of that work in UCD, and that's just one example. This is very much guided and supported by groups such as Ignite, and that's why I believe that your network is critically important to raising standards within health and getting to reach those communities and those individuals which are often very hard to reach in terms of getting the health awareness and health promotion messages across, and indeed encouraging people to participate in the health service and avail of services that are there. And it's further encouraged by the Health Research Board. This whole approach, I think, is very much an approach that is recognised as a key approach by the HRB, making PPI a principle for research grant funding. And speaking to Anne earlier there from the HRB, was delighted to hear her enthusiasm for this approach. And I think the word that she used was that PPI is exploding, which is terrific to hear from your funder. But I know that the HRB has very much been to the fore in in being out there involved with individuals and with communities in terms of the importance of the role that the public and patients play in assisting research and in enriching it. These advances in research inform our evidence base clearly, which shape our policies and pave the way for a more inclusive, person-centred healthcare system. However, I think we all recognise that our work is not nearly finished in this area. I also want to talk just for a minute about the role of public representatives in healthcare policy. The principles of public and patient involvement also apply to the development of health policy. And I think this was very much evident in the work of the Dáil Committee on the Future of Healthcare, which developed the Sláintecare Reform Programme. Our starting point in that work was to ask the public and patient groups about what they wanted the Irish health system to be. We got hundreds of written submissions and had hearings where we took oral submissions on many of the key issues. And those inputs were essential to the success of our work on the committee. We also, of course, spoke to international experts in the field of healthcare systems. We spoke to staff groups and all of that. But our starting point was with the user of healthcare services. And that engagement was hugely valuable and made an enormous contribution, I think, to the work of the committee. As public representatives on the committee, I wanted to say a word in favour of public representatives and TDs. We had insights to contribute also. Each day, our constituents contact us and entrust us with their diverse healthcare concerns. These individual voices collectively form a very powerful chorus which guides our mission as policy decision makers. And that's something that we always have to keep to the fore, as I know you all recognise, that irrespective of the fixed views that we may have, you know, we must always keep in touch with the people for whom the healthcare system is intended. Often we are the conduits as public representatives for the voices of the people that we serve. Ultimately, those voices must and increasingly do set the agenda for change. However, that important work was not only about incorporating those lived experiences of the public and of patients, but we also had the support and guidance of an expert research team from Trinity, led by Professor Steve Thomas. In this way, there was a high level of collaboration between patients, the public, policymakers, and the research team in developing the Sláintecare strategy, a strategy to drive transformative change to our health services. There's no doubt there are challenges in the Irish healthcare system. In recent years, our healthcare system has faced significant challenges in terms of resources, structural issues, and morale. I'm not going to go into those in any detail today and just naming them, but I also want to talk about another aspect of that. And in addition, episodes of inadequate care and disheartening scandals have eroded public trust and confidence. The cervical check issue and the current concerns in respect of children's spinal surgeries are just two cases in point. Poor communication with patients and the resulting breakdown of trust greatly exacerbates the damage caused by these events. I think the important issue is not about the fact that regrettable and unfortunate things happen in the healthcare system. The question is how we deal with them. And I think in both of those cases, you know, there are a lot of lessons to be learned about the importance of absolute clarity, open disclosure, and good communication. And we still have some way to go in that regard. To build confidence in our public health system, it's crucial that we strive towards rebuilding trust by prioritising a patient-centric approach at all times. So what about designing a patient-centric healthcare system? Our strategies should revolve around the central concept of co-designing and implementation of healthcare reforms in partnership with patients and the public, right from the initial stages. This collaborative approach ensures that our efforts are rooted in the needs and perspectives of those that we serve. Through active engagement with a wide spectrum of stakeholders and community representatives, attentively listening to their input and promptly addressing their feedback, we can collaboratively shape effective solutions that yield lasting improvements for everyone. So what's needed is a paradigm shift. And we know that, and you all here recognize the importance of that, the key element of PPI involvement. We must undergo a fundamental shift away from viewing patient and public involvement as a mere add-on or tick box exercise. If we are to drive substantial investments in healthcare reform, we must abandon those paternalistic attitudes and ensure that our decisions align with the core values and needs of our patients and the public. What we require is a commitment to meaningful, consistent, and authentic engagement of the public and patients in decision-making concerning complex health and care-related challenges. Patients and the public, equipped with their unique insights, values, and experiences, become partners. To grasp the potential of this approach, we need only look, I think, to successful models that we already have in this country. The citizens' assemblies, for example, work on the Patient Safety Act, the Women's Health Action Plan, where there was widespread consultation. These are all good examples of the positive power of inclusive decision-making, where the collective wisdom of citizens can lead to transformative policy outcomes. In conclusion then, as we envision a healthcare system that places patients and the public at its core, we recognise that this is not merely an aspiration, but an imperative. A healthcare system where diverse voices are heard and personal perspectives are valued and included in research, in training, right through to practice at the front line. I want to thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I really look forward to the ongoing input of the network and the results that we are already seeing in relation to good practice and improvements to the health service and contribution to the kind of reforms that are underway and the considerable distance that we need still to go in relation to that, to create the kind of modern public healthcare and social care system in this country, which has the potential to transform the lives, our society, the lives of so many people, our society, and indeed our economy. With that, I would just like to wish you well, not only in your deliberations today and your engagement with other partners, but also across the month of October in relation to all of the very many and very impressive activities that are planned right across the 7 universities. I hope you have a really worthwhile day today. I hope it's really productive, and thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Deputy Shortall. So next up, we have Professor Sean Dineen. Sean is the national lead for the PPI Ignite Network, and unfortunately, Sean is overseas at the moment for a work commitment, but has some words to share with us online that he recorded for us.
Good morning, everybody, and I'd like to welcome you to the launch of our second National PPI Festival. My name is Sean Dineen. I'm a diabetes doctor based in Galway in the west of Ireland. And I have the privilege of leading our PPI Ignite Network, which is funded by the Health Research Board and the Irish Research Council, and has as its overarching aim to build capacity for high quality, meaningful PPI in our health and social care research systems in Ireland. Our network came into existence in March of 2021 and has just recently passed the halfway point of our 5 years of funding. This is our second festival. Our network is made up of 7 lead sites, universities, 10 national partners, including 2 additional universities on the island of Ireland, and approximately 50 local partners. And together we make up a very vibrant and active network with work packages that are attempting to change the approach to research and to enable partnership and more involvement of the people for whom the research matters. We will, in this next month, during the festival, have spotlight put on health and our PPI in health research across our universities, patient organisations, some public agencies, and charities across Ireland. We will have people from outside of Ireland looking in and indeed joining us for some events, very interested in this idea of celebrating, which is what the festival is about, our work and celebrating excellence in PPI. We see PPI not as an end in itself, but rather as a means to an end, the end being higher quality research delivered in Ireland. The festival tries to champion that by highlighting this shift in mindset, so that the next generation of researchers will look on involvement of public and patients as normal and not something additional. We will have events across the country: Dublin, Galway, Limerick, Cork, Waterford, and of course many online events. We will celebrate many things, including a month-long exhibition of images taken by young adults experiencing homelessness to inform a co-designed mental health support program as an example of excellence in PPI, and also in equality, diversity, and inclusion. I'd like to thank Deputy Shortall, Dr. Sarah McLoughlin, whom you've heard from, and the president of DCU involved in this launch. I'd like to thank the team in DCU and in the National Programme Office, and especially Owen Scott, the DCU Programme Manager, who has brought great energy and has really influenced this programme up today and indeed the festival. So thank you, and I hope that you enjoy your participation today and across the month of the festival.
Thank you. So yes, I suppose rather than taking any time, what I'd like to do in terms of opening up this conversation, where we're being asked to kind of think about the dynamics and kind of balancing the collaboration within PPI, and core to PPI are the partnerships that we are involved with, get involved with, and how they evolve. So in introducing themselves, I'd like to invite Padraig and Kieran to maybe talk to us briefly about how this partnership began. So maybe Padraig, I might start with, or Padraig, and then maybe Kieran.
Good morning, everyone. Lovely to be here. So my name is Padraig Carl. I'm a PhD student in the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, and I arrived at PPI through my studies in UCC and NUIG, where I got interested in PPI through psychology and research. So now I'm studying PPI in RCSI, so it's really come full circle. So I got interested in this project and I started in 2020. In March 2020, I joined RCSI, and in March 2020, we all went into lockdown. So it was a really interesting time to get started in PPI and get into research and figure out how exactly we're going to carry out PPI when we were all stuck at home. So I joined the PPI project in RCSI, which started off as part of a collaboration between the IRFU Charitable Trust, SFI Amber, and the Royal College of Surgeons to host a spinal cord repair project. And as part of the project, I thought it'd be really valuable to get the perspectives of seriously injured rugby players as part of that work. So they set up a PPI advisory panel, and Kieran will tell you a bit more about that. But that panel works as part of the spinal cord repair project to collaborate and really inform the research. And so I joined in 2020 and started working from there. And we started working together over Zoom. I think our first phone call was.
I'm an IT illiterate. I didn't have some idea what the Zoom process and all the rest. I had no idea. So this guy has guided me over that period when it comes to the digital aspects, shall we say, of our communication.
I didn't know how Zoom worked when we started this. But yeah, so we started from there over Zoom, and then when lockdown ended, we were able to meet again. We started working on our PPI together in person, and it's developed from there. And I suppose Kieran will give you a bit more of a story as he got involved in that.
Sure. I was approached by a man called Cliff Byrne. Cliff is a former facial maxillary consultant. He's also a member of the IRFU Charitable Trust. Him together with a man called John Quinlan, head of orthopedics in the Tala University Hospital, also a member of the trust. They approached the head of research in the College of Surgeons, a man called Fergal O'Brien, and they just asked him a simple question: would it at all be possible to initiate research into spinal cord injury repair? The answer was yes, thank God, because not an awful lot has been done in this particular area. So I'm grateful to be involved with this particular project, and I do feel privileged to be involved in this particular project. Long may it continue. The advantage of the association with the Charitable Trust is, I'll be straight, they provide seed funding for the research to continue. So now it's not core funding, and there's always a need for more funding. But seed funding is very welcome. That's my connection. Really.
And maybe following on from that then, Kieran, just in terms of how that relationship has evolved maybe from the beginning to where it is now. So I take it that neither of you knew each other, or perhaps the organisations hadn't been involved previously. So it'd be really interesting to hear how that has evolved.
Yeah. There's the group itself. It's a fairly sizable group. In fact, I like to look at it as three subgroupings within one group. You have 3 injured players, and when I say injured players, I mean players who became paralysed as a consequence of playing rugby. You have 3 clinicians. You have John and Cliff, but you also have Emer. Emer Smith is a rehabilitative consultant. She works out in the National Rehabilitation Hospital and also in the Mater. And then you have a team of lab-based researchers, in addition to facilitating scientists like Porrick. Michelle Flood would be another facilitating scientist. So it's a fairly sizable group, but it works on the basis of PPI. And it does so, as far as I'm concerned, there's 3 pillars to PPI. We listen to each other, we learn from each other, and we continuously question each other. That's the glue that keeps the group together. So well, Porrick has his perspective on that as well. I met Porrick about a year into the process. I think it was just a year before, and thank God, as I said, he arrived to explain Zoom to me and all.
It'd be lovely to hear a little bit more about that, Porrick, in terms of just the being questioned, but also the listening to, and maybe some of the challenges in that.
Yeah, well, look, I come from a background again of psychology, and I'm very lucky to be part of such a diverse and multidisciplinary research team. As Kieran said, we have the seriously injured players, we have the clinicians, and we have the researchers who are divided up again. There's neuroscientists, chemists, bioinformaticists, many others who are all part of the team. And we all have our own knowledge and experiences and knowledge base to work off of, and we all come at this from a different perspective. So that's been really, really valuable, So in terms of how that's kind of developed over time, I think we've all become a lot closer in terms of understanding each other. I remember the very early PPI sessions might have kind of been very much discussing, look, this is what we think, this is what we think, and just kind of talking back and forth. But as we went on, it really became more collaborative. We all grew closer, and we all began to understand each other's perspectives a lot better. I think someone remarked that they found it tough to tell at times where Kieran ends and Adrian, who's one of our neuroscientists, begins in terms of just understanding the knowledge. So in terms of knowledge sharing, in terms of understanding each other better, we all learned so much about each other throughout the process. That's just been really, really beneficial, I think, strengthened the project.
And maybe from both of your perspectives, was there a particular point where that became really real to you both, that this was more than maybe two groups talking together, but that rather there was something kind of collective, that together you were achieving something that neither of you separately were going to be able to achieve? Yeah,
no, absolutely. Before this project, there was three intrinsic difficulties with spinal cord injury repair. The first was a disinclination to do anything at all. Now, it's understandable given the prognosis given to an individual with a spinal cord injury. That lack of movement, permanent. That lack of sensation, permanent. Bodily functions never be the same again. Oh, and given the fact that your system has taken such a hit, the likelihood of infection, recurring infection into the future is very, very high. And some of these infections, fatal. Like sepsis would be very close to the top of that. So yeah, that's clearly all those issues are addressed. In addition, then I would say a lack of interest. Well, that's understandable. That's understandable also because spinal cord injury in the population is only a small figure. And thankfully, that's the case. Absolutely, thankfully, that's the case. It's nothing like cancer that is absolutely widespread. So cancer naturally would and needs to attract more funding. And then there's the issue of funding itself. The funding and the interest, what good funding without interest, what good interest without funding. So clearly interdependent. It's a circular problem. But again, those three issues, if you like, the disinclination, the lack of interest, and the lack of all addressed in with this particular project. So yeah, when I say I'm grateful and it gives me joy and it is a privilege to be associated, I mean it. We've just got some more seed funding from the Charitable Trust and from Amber, so it's going to continue, and it's a pleasure from my point of view to be involved.
And from your perspective, Padraig?
So just to build on what Kieran said, collaboration and relationship building is really important to what we do. One of the things that stands out to me and I would consider is when we're talking about spinal cord research, we're talking about research that takes place generally in a laboratory that's very kind of far away removed from the day-to-day realities and the facts of living with a condition. And it's often being worked on by researchers who may not be interacting with people who have that condition on a daily or regular basis. So that's one of the things that I find PPI really does for a project like ours. It's regular collaboration, and you're regularly working together with people who are living with the condition that you're researching. I think that's particularly important for preclinical science. And one of the things that always stood out is I was talking to one of the scientists on the research team, and I was just talking about PPI and how it's kind of impacted his work. And he's saying, like, look, has it changed what I do day to day in a lab? What cells am I working on? What materials am I working with? No. Has it changed the way I think about my research? Completely and utterly. Absolutely. You can really see, they say they can really see, a connection between what they do and the application and the real life impact of that.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. I think my time has been called now, but I'd like to thank Padraig and Kieran both very much for this part of the conversation, and I think we're moving on to the next part now. So thank you both.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And up next, we have Dr. John Salzberg, who is the PPI Ignite lead in University of Limerick, who will be facilitating a conversation with Colin and Scott, who are joining us today from Queen's University Belfast, looking at PPI helping to shape mental health outcomes.
Thanks so much, Martha. And thank you all. It's an honor to be here. And it's so lovely to be here to launch this second PPI festival. And it was just very exciting. I'm going to stop talking because you're not here to see me. I am from the University of Limerick, and I represent a lovely team there and our wonderful local partners who are been fundamental in everything that we've been trying to achieve over the last, 6 years now, but 3 years before and 3 years in this particular iteration. But right now, it's really my honor to introduce to you a couple of gentlemen who I've known for many, many minutes now. But I immediately felt a kinship with exactly everything that you do, everything that you're striving to do, and the way that you work together. So Scott and Colin, I was going to give you a very brief introduction, but it's better if I just let you introduce yourselves, and we'll take it from there.
Well, my name is Colin Hughes. I'm one of the lecturers in Queen's University, working within the field of mental health nursing and psychotherapy. And this is...
Hi, I'm Scott. So I'm an honorary lecturer in the school. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice as well, but I live with bipolar disorder. So that was really the way that I got into the school initially. And once I got into it, I couldn't get out. So I've been involved for about 5 years now. So I sit on what's called the PCEP group. So that's Patient and Care Educational Partnership in Queen's, which is absolutely fantastic, isn't it, Colin? It's a really positive force for change, I think, and also do other things like the Research Ethics Committee and the Faculty of Medicine and Nursing, and lots of other different things. I do lots of teaching with Colin and with other competent colleagues. Thank you very much. So I'll pass you back to Colin.
Yeah, I mean, I came to Queen's University, 15 years ago, and within the field of mental health nursing, we had always had an ethos of having our partners working embedded not only within the teaching component, but in terms of helping to design curricula and curriculum implementation. And we'd always used a co-design, a collaborative approach, a co-development approach in terms of everything that we did. So it became a natural progression then within the school for the formation of kind of the precept committee. Although I remember being called something different. It's gone through a variety of different title changes, and it is so embedded within the ethos of the school that it wouldn't be considered, I don't think, the kind of a group of people that are sort of sitting parallel to us. It's integrated. So whenever Scott comes in to teach either my undergrad nursing program or the cognitive behavioral psychotherapy program, it's a colleague who's coming in to teach. It isn't we're bringing a expert by experience or a service user in to give a service user an expert by experience sort of opinion or an idea what it's like. It's a colleague who's coming in who is no different, no worse, no better than any of the other component of the teaching team. And it's timetable like any other part of what we're doing. So I don't think of Scott as any other than a lecturing colleague, and Scott isn't the only person that obviously that we bring in. All of these people, they're colleagues and lecturing staff, and that's their position. That's what they do. And I think it's the only way to kind of think about it. It's the only way it works. So I'll have a look.
Yeah, I think there's probably 3 of us that were made honorary lecturers. And so that's right across the board. I would, obviously mental health. There are other aspects of teaching that other people do. And I think it makes a real difference because we actually get paid as well. I don't think we're supposed to, but we do, we get paid. So it's well worth it from that perspective. And just as Colin was saying, I think the strength of what we do together is that very much we're absolutely central to whatever happens in the school. And that might be research, for example. I sit on a few advisory panels for PhD students. I can supervise PhD students, but I haven't had any as yet. And it's not because I can't be bothered. It's just, you know, there's too many other things that are happening. But basically, whatever it is that we have to offer, then that's used within the school. So, for example, as a psychotherapist, that's very much part of what I do when I come in to teach. So, a typical example would be going to second-year undergraduates. I give them a case study of a person with bipolar disorder, and at the end of it, they say, "There's not much hope there, is there?" And then I say, "Well, that's me." So, you know, it's really about working together. And I think it has a huge benefit because I would have people who were students coming up to me and saying, you know, that they appreciated the input that we all had into their training. And if it helps just to, you know, to reframe things, then I think it's really worthwhile.
I suppose just to add on that, at the end of the day, we're in the business of helping people and getting, I suppose, in a very clinical way, getting better outcomes for people. And I've heard kind of people talking about this idea, certainly from the keynote speakers, that, you know, there's this group of people who kind of have some sort of expertise and they sort of deliver it, and that's starting to change, which is, of course, fantastic. Where I come from, it just seems strange that there's an idea that there's this one group of people who hold some sort of secret piece of information and are experts, and they're going to deliver it to somebody else, and they're going to sit there and passively kind of take it. That astonishes me, because there's a phrase you hear, particularly in nursing, quite a lot, patient-centeredness. And I don't believe in any way, shape, or form you can be patient-centered if you're not making an attempt to work alongside and collaborate with the very people that you're supposed to be working with. Because how can you then tailor a treatment in a way that's meaningful and useful for that person, unless they're part of that, unless, you know, they're going alongside you. If you're not doing that, what you're trying to do then is you've got some weird model in your head that you're imposing on someone. And so why would you not be surprised if that doesn't get the outcome that we're looking for? Because if I'm turning up to get a treatment and someone's telling me something, someone's trying to fit me into a particular box, well, I know what I do. I smile. Because it's happened to me. I smile and I say yes. And then I leave, and then I do what I'm going to do anyway. And that's it. And so it's, you know, to me, if you're going to be patient-centered or person-centered, then you can't be exclusive. You can't take the idea that you hold some secret treasure trove of knowledge that you're going to, in such a benevolent way, dispense to the masses. It just seems bizarre to me. And certainly having people like Scott and other people like Neve and Lillian, not only contributing to curricular design, but coming in and teaching the students. We have undergrads and postgraduates. And I think one of the biggest impacts is the postgraduate group. We've got people who've been working in the health service in a variety of different ways for years, and they come into the psychotherapy training. And they've got a whole host of conscious and unconscious biases, a whole host of ideas about EDI as something that's imposed, as opposed to something that we should just be doing. And again, in that collaborative space. And it's unbelievably powerful when Scott, Lillian, and I'll come in and teach these students, because for weeks after they will say, not only has this changed how I'm going to approach this particular training, but it has fundamentally changed how I interact in my clinics outside of this teaching space. And it completely changes things. So I remember one student saying, you know, we used to do this thing where if a patient missed 2 appointments, we would send them a letter to say, well, you've missed 2 appointments, you're now discharged. Well, we now see that as if they've missed 2 appointments, it's maybe because the service user's having a bit of difficulty. So we now write them a letter that says, we understand, would you like a phone call? And she was saying all of a sudden, we're getting very few people who are not turning up the appointments now, because we're starting to we're starting to think about it differently. So to me that's on the ground, significant EPOM change in kind of impact. So I'll be quiet.
Yeah, my job here was to redirect and ask probing questions, but there's absolutely nothing that I could do. But what I would love to ask, and actually you've even taken that, because I think that last example is a great one, was asked, what are you most proud of that's come out of your collaboration over the years? And you've mentioned some on the ground impacts, and obviously.
Yeah, I think so. And I think just having us in the various teaching situations, I think that's one of the best things. I should say in those terms as well, that so Queen's are funding me to do a postgraduate certificate in higher education, which is quite impressive. You probably didn't know that, did you? Yeah. So that level of commitment, and I think that's really positive. I think in terms of other things as well, probably one of the proudest parts of it is that we're now consulting for other groups. So within the School of Medicine, within Queen's School of Pharmacy, we're also looking at Bournemouth University, where we're doing collaborative things. So I think that is very much part of what we do, and it's so interesting to interact with those different groups of people, and to share some of the things that we've done. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff there that's been very powerful.
Yeah, and I suppose I'll just finish off by saying I think that's what Scott said is, I would just echo. I mean, as I say, we've been in school nurse, we've been in this for years and years and years. And I suppose it hasn't been seen as that important in in other parts of our faculty. But as people have seen the impact that it's had, they're now starting to come to Scott and the precept committee and ask, you guys have been doing it for so long now, rather than us trying to go away and figure out how to do it, could you just sort of show us how to do it? And they've been a bit cheeky sometimes, Scott, where they've asked our guys just to do the work for them sometimes. But I think that's okay when you're starting out, because you're trying to get the momentum going. But I think that's impressive. But I mean, I don't think there's one single thing I would say that I would be really proud of. I think just the whole thing I'm proud of, because it's just the right thing. No one should have to think that this is what we should do. This should just be the right thing that we do, because it's the thing that the last thing I will show up at this point is we're all consumers of services, every single one of us. And so I always think that, if I'm going in as a service user consumer, then I want to have a voice in that. So why should I, as a clinician, then not act that way professionally? Again, that just doesn't seem right to me. And I think that's kind of part of the ethos that the School of Nursing has had, and it has been throughout. I know we were talking about mental health, because we're doing very much a lot of work within the mental health sphere, mental health nursing and psychotherapy. But we also have contributed massively to our other fields of nursing, our adult branch, our children's branch, our learning disability branch, and our midwifery branch, because there used to be an idea almost that sort of communication and how you interact with an individual is kind of like a soft skill or an add-on skill. And we now have embedded the concept that these are core skills. We don't care how good a surgeon you are, or we don't care how good a nurse you are. If you don't know how to fundamentally communicate with an individual, how to sit alongside them, it doesn't matter how good you are. There's no way you're going to be able to be as clinically effective as you should or as you could be. And so that's also had a big impact across our training.
We should just say actually one other thing that I think is really significant. So whenever I go in to teach, there's always 1, 2, 3 students that will come up to me afterwards and talk about maybe their own situations with bipolar disorder, whatever it might be. And there are some that would subsequently become clients, maybe a bit further down the line, so they come along. So I think that aspect of it can't be underestimated. And that just doesn't happen with me. I know that it happens with the other folks that go in to talk to people. So that element was a bit surprising for me because I didn't expect that to happen, but it does. And I guess it shows that we're open and that seeing people with lived experience has that extra positive impact too.
Well, that's a lovely sentiment to end on. Well, thank you very, very, very much.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, everyone. So up next is Clodagh Donovan, who is a key member of the PPI Ignite team at Trinity College Dublin, joined by John and Suzanne, speaking about involving the younger people's voices in PPI. And just to note that at about 12:20, we'll be taking a comfort break. So for those of you online and everyone in the room.
Thanks very much, Martha. That's great. I'm delighted to introduce you to John Mitchell from Barrettstown Children's Charity. John has worked in Barrettstown for nearly 20 years and has been camp director for a decade up until last year, where you're now head of partnerships, working with as part of that work is working with the research subcommittee. So you're relatively recent to the research world, which is really interesting to get that perspective as well. And Professor Suzanne Guerin from UCD has been involved in Barrettstown since the 90s, mid-90s. And you know John very well, obviously. So would you like just to share a little bit about the work you've done with young people in PPI?
Yeah, I suppose, first of all, thanks a million for giving us the chance to be here. I started in Barrettstown in 2004 as a student who very much wasn't sure where they were going or what they were doing, and then realised very quickly I'd stumbled into something very, very special. And Barrettstown, for anybody who doesn't know, I suppose Barrettstown works with young people affected by serious illness and their families. So although about just over 50% of the people who come to Barrettstown, or the kids who come to Barrettstown, would have a hematology or oncology diagnosis, we work with about 12, 13 other illness groups as well. And it's, over the last 30 years, it has evolved a huge amount from what we started out doing, which was residential children and teenage programs where kids would come and stay for 7 and 8 days with us. Now we run family weekends, we run bereavement programs, we have a young adult program. So it has really grown and become a huge provider for these life-changing therapeutic programs that young people and their families get to be a part of. I suppose I was saying outside to Susie, I heard Susie's name when I first joined Barrettstown in 2004 as somebody who, you really need to speak to at some point and listen to when she talks as well. And she's been such an enormous support to Barrettstown in terms of getting what we do and the work we do out to a wide audience of people. And I said to Claude outside too, I would speak a lot about the camps we run and the programs we offer. And to be able to have those programs backed up by research is crucial, because I think, when you meet me and you think, well, this person works for Barrettstown, he's going to tell you it's amazing. It's great to have independent research or research that we have collaborated on to help show actually what we're doing is working, and also it's important to support it as well. And our mission is to rebuild the lives of children affected by serious illness. That's a huge statement to make. And how do you rebuild somebody's life, whether they're going through illness or after illness? And you start by rebuilding their confidence and their self-esteem and their social skills and their independence and all those things that illness can take from people. Research plays such a massive role then in highlighting the impact that program can have, to speak about it with a wider group, I would say.
So that's great. Suzanne, can I ask you to talk a little bit about the highlights of the work you've done, but also maybe the different challenges in approaching PPI with younger people rather than the general older population? Because I know there's researchers out there who want to do that and they're maybe a little bit daunted.
Yeah, I mean, I think not to start on a negative, but I think anyone who does research in a space where children and young people are the voice you want to hear, one of the challenges of really meaningful, impactful PPI can be access, and access through organisations that have an authentic commitment to amplifying those voices. And I think that's where I've been spoiled with Barrettstown, because obviously Barrettstown Mitch has really captured the work that they do, but what's embedded in all of the work that they do is listening and hearing from those children, young people, their parents, their grandparents, and in shaping their programs in response to those voices. So therefore, for me as a researcher, when I want to sense check, you know, why am I asking this question? Why am I supporting this project? Why am I working in this area? Working with Barrettstown, where PPI, before it was PPI, was embedded in the work that they do, means you have a commitment to those voices, but also you have a community of voices, because you have, you know, children and young people who are actively involved in programs. You've got the Barrettstown alumni who've grown up from those programs and are now professionals and researchers themselves. You've got parents, you've got the professionals who work with Barrettstown's programs. So you've got this access to a community. And that's the thing that can sometimes be challenging when you want to link with young people. Are those, how do I link with them? How do I, you know, meet them in a place and a space that's encouraging of those voices? And Barrettstown does that in everything it does. So I think that has helped overcome that challenge. I think the other thing as a researcher that many people, you know, here and online may experience is that frustration of when you've done a piece of research, having it impact. And Mitch and I can come up with multiple examples of times where the report that we generated together immediately changed the work that was being done at Barrettstown. But not only Barrettstown, because Barrettstown has amplified that information through the Series 4 network, which is a collaboration of camps working in this area, but also through the work that Mitch and others do to talk about the research. It reaches an audience that, as a researcher in an institution, I would never reach. You know, forget about the peer-reviewed publications, the sort of impact that this collaboration has created at Barrettstown and beyond, I don't think is achievable for every researcher when you don't have a really meaningful collaborative relationship.
Yeah, and I think just something that Susie kind of sparked in my head there was we recently served our 100,000th camper and family member through the gates of Barrettstown, which is an incredible achievement. We're about to be 30 years old next year, but part of our, I suppose, evolution back in, say, the early, 2010, 2011 time was how do we do more outside the gates of Barrettstown? And we weren't really sure in what direction that should go or that should lead us. And it was very much informed by families and by young people who've been a part of the service to say, it would be amazing if you could support us when we're in hospital. And out of that grew the hospital outreach program, where we have a team of specialists that go in and work on the ward or in rooms with young people while they're receiving their treatment. And then out of that also came, God, it would be great if you could support us when we go back to school. You know, so out of that grew our school education program, where we can go into a classroom and educate young people on these are the conditions that your classmate has, or this is the condition your classmate has, and here's how you can best look out for them. And it just creates such a lovely experience for that young person then going back into school, which would be a very daunting time for them otherwise. And I think, again, all of these decisions around how we evolve the program and the direction we take our programs is informed by research and supported by research. I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely. The key thing is it's not just limited to the School of Psychology at UCD. So our very dear friend and DCU staff member, Jenna Kiernan, was back there in the 90s when we began sort of looking at some of Barrettstown's programs. The hospital outreach program that Mitch mentioned was evaluated by colleagues in the NUTS who had approached Barrettstown with an interest in doing some research. So this, you know, this isn't about a single institution, single organisation collaboration. It's about an organisation embracing research, recognising the role that they can play in supporting, encouraging and driving that research, and then taking that attitude and engaging with multiple other researchers again to amplify that. So it's mushroomed and grown beyond an individual organisation and an individual service setting.
It's brilliant to hear of the work you're doing, and that, you know, that idea of Barrettstown doing PPI research before PPI was a thing, and in like having that direct impact on your own policy and practice is so powerful. And the fact that it's not just national, it's global, which is I hadn't known until I spoke to you earlier, which is amazing. What advice would you get? I mean, it's great to know that as head of partnership, this is what you do. You're looking for, so if there are researchers out there you know, get in touch with John Mitchell, you know, build that partnership, and you have access to that amazing community of young people, their families, their carers, and all of that. I think that's a phenomenal resource. So it's great to remember that.
Yeah, and I will say, Clodagh, when I took on the role of head of partnerships, I didn't know research was part of it. and now I dedicate a lot of time to it, you know, but it has been, because I'm not a researcher and I'm not a medic, and so it has been a huge eye-opening experience for me, especially getting to work with people like Susie and Dr. Gemma Kiernan as well. And it's a massive just to watch how they work and what they're able to get out of people. It's just fantastic. And I suppose my role in it is to make sure that whatever we can come up with in terms of statistics or whatever the research project is, that it gets to the right people within Barrettstown who can then make sure it goes straight into program delivery or program evolution or whatever it might be. So it is fascinating to work with people from different areas and different fields too. But just the point about the wide audience that we have and that we work with, I mean, we're looking to serve about 17,000 young people this year alone. And as part of our next strategic plan, we're hoping to grow that number to about 25,000 young people annually. So it's an exciting time for Barrettstown at the moment, but there's so much scope to what we can do with PPI and with research as well going forward.
Fantastic. Can I ask you both just to give maybe a little advice to the researchers out there who are looking to engage with young people in their own PPI work? What advice would you give them on how to build those good working relationships with younger people?
I think my first experience of working with young people in any kind of a research setting was through the Young Persons Advisory Group with Dr. Peter McCarthy, focusing mainly on oncology. And I know from my work in Barrettstown that young people are so invested in improving the patient experience for the next person. I think that I said this to you outside, Claude. I think that's so important that it's amazing how motivated they are and how invested they are in improving services. So if there's any project around how to improve the patient experience, young people will jump at that if they've gone through that experience themselves, I think. But I know too, it can be very daunting when you're working with, certainly because my expertise is working with young people. As I said, it's not as a researcher, but they will be very daunted and very intimidated by being in a room with researchers and with medics and consultants. And you have to try and do something that breaks down those barriers to get them to participate. And something we've done very, very effectively with the YPAG is to try and instill in them, you're the expert here. You've gone through this, you've lived through this. We need to hear from you. So the most voices we should hear are the voices of the young people. And I think collectively then as the adults in the room, we've learned a huge amount.
Brilliant. That's really useful. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think sometimes as researchers, we might make assumptions that because we hear from young people in our research that we know how to talk with young people.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, recognizing the limitations of your skill and working with organizations who are so skilled in it can be hugely beneficial. I think the other, sort of note I'd make is, do think about who's in the room as well. I mean, we're, sometimes with PPI, you're looking for volunteers, you're looking for people who have the availability, the time, the capacity to contribute. But actually, sometimes that means that there are other voices that are silenced, that there may be, people from different backgrounds, from different diverse groups who don't have that opportunity. And when you have a partner like Barrettstown that, again, has that reach, that skill of supporting people to speak and share when they maybe haven't had that opportunity. When I started working in research, I remember realizing that people have opinions and views, but sometimes they need support in maximizing their impact. And the type of support that I know Barrettstown has done with the YPAG and other groups to, again, amplify their voices means that you have very skilled PPI contributors, and that's a huge benefit.
And one of the things to add, Claude, quickly is something we train our staff in. So my time as camp director, I would have worked directly with the staff who then work directly with the families. And something I would have always said to them is kids are bursting to talk if you can ask them the right questions, and having, being a young person and having an adult with you who wants to listen to what you have to say is hugely empowering for young people as well. And they're not used to that, so they will tell you everything you need to know if you can ask the right questions.
Brilliant. And of course, with your experience, you're able to guide researchers to frame their questions in a way that's more accessible.
And even setting up an environment where they feel comfortable talking and sharing is we can help with that too, absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, look, I would encourage any researchers looking to do this kind of PPI work to contact John. And And I'm sure, Suzanne, you'd be happy to help people as well, just give them a steer in what way to approach. Unfortunately, we're out of time, which is an awful pity because I could talk to you all day. But thanks a million for sharing those insights. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for everyone's contribution so far this morning. So we're going in now to a 10-minute comfort break. So we'll meet back here at 12:30. For those of you online, we'll be back on at 12:30 sharp. And for those of you in the room, back in here at 12:28. You might reconvene. Are we good online? Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. Thanks very much, everyone. So I hope you all enjoyed that very brief break, and delighted now to be introducing Dr. Anna Cody from the Health Research Board. Anna is the head of investigator-led awards and research careers within the Health Research Board, and has also paved the way for PPI within the Health Research Board and very much further afield. And she's here today to talk to us about the Health Research Board strategy and the road ahead for us all.
Isn't it great to be here? It's fabulous. I'm absolutely delighted to be part of this. It's after the festival last year, it's really brought such an energy and such a great vibrancy and just different voices and different perspectives and different elements of PPI. And it really brings home that it needs such a broad community. And we have quite different roles, some of it, in different settings, but it does take all of those roles and all of those people and all of those hands to make it happen. So great to see it all coming together. And I think what we really would like to achieve from the HRB's perspective is making this all perfectly normal in a research setting, from the setting of the research question all the way through the conduct of the research and the analysis and into implementation. And beyond that, to make PPI recognized within research institutions and rewarded within research institutions, but also in the healthcare system. And I think it's lovely that actually the HSE's Patient and Public Partnership Conference is within this year's festival, and I think that's great. It's a really, really good sign. So we're currently about halfway through our strategy, and we are very much putting people at the heart of everything we do. That's kind of the central piece of our strategy. And within that, on the PPI side, there are a couple of elements that we will continue to do for the rest of this strategy. And just to say that as PPI very much increased in prominence from the last strategic plan to this one, this is not something that's going away. That will very much remain with the HRB. So, I mean, the areas where we see our role are still around awareness raising. I think there's still work that needs to be done there. And that also includes that we've just revamped the PPI part of our website, which was not very good at all. And now is looking somewhat better. We also still need to publish things and put out work that we have done around PPI and surveys that we've done. But as a funder, really the best way you can get researchers' attention is if you link the way you give out money to what it is that you want to influence. And we have been incorporating PPI into HRB funding decisions for quite a number of years now. We started slowly, we tried to build capacity, give people feedback, not having part of decisions. but slowly moved towards having it as part of decisions. And that's where we are now. And that's something that's quite important to us. It's one area that we need to work on, I think, is that whilst we have a pool of public reviewers that have volunteered to review applications for their PPI elements, we need to bring more diversity to that group. It's, you know, it's great to have them and they're fabulous, but the representation within that isn't as it should be, I think. That's going to be slow and incremental work because there's no one-size-fits-all strategy there. So it's going to be something that will be with us for quite some time as well. I think what we also are very much interested in is removing barriers to PPI, and that's one of the areas where we're definitely working with the network, and where we're also sort of need to think about what ways there might be around facilitating PPI work ahead of funding applications. That's a tricky area. Nothing has been decided, but it's something that certainly merits conversation and discussion. Supporting capacity building for high quality PPI has to be another part to our portfolio, and of course the network is doing a vast amount of work there, and our role there is as a funder and as a supporter, but we also meet regularly with the network to discuss areas where we can help each other. So quite beyond just saying, okay, if we've outsourced something, I think there are areas where we can genuinely support each other. And what we also need to do is monitor and evaluate PPI activities. So what difference does it make? I think there is a great acceptance that this is important, but we can always do with more evidence. And sort of looking at sort of one idea I do have at the moment is around looking at the quality of the applications that the HRB gets and of the PPI section in those applications. We have 10 years now, or will have 10 years next year, that we have asked PPI questions, and I can tell you that things have changed. But I can't quantify it, and I can't give you anything other than a gut feeling. So, I think there are areas that we need to work on. We have a very small team, and for all of us, this is part of what we do, and not the only job. However, I think it's a very enthusiastic group, and we really want to see this move on, and are so delighted with the festival and with everything that signifies. And well, just want to say thank you very much for inviting us, and well, enjoy all the festival events and go home and tell everybody about it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anna. That was wonderful. And up next, delighted to introduce Dr. Sarah McLoughlin, who is here to speak to us today about bridging the gap between science and lived experience. Sarah works with Cancer Trials Ireland and is a wonderful person, very, very big life within the PPI space, and is very passionate about including the patient voice, the lived experience within the healthcare system here in Ireland. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Martha. That was very kind. It was really, really nice to be here, guys. And it's fantastic to see this festival here again. And as somebody else mentioned earlier, that PPI has exploded in recent years, and it's really true. So Yes, my name is Sarah McLoughlin, and my background is that I'm a biologist by training. So I did my PhD in the Conway in UCD and in molecular biology, and I worked in Philadelphia in the University of Pennsylvania as a postdoc in a research lab there as well. So what I do now, I'm the PPI coordinator of Cancer Trials Ireland. I also hold a few other roles, such as I'm on the HSE board as a patient rep. I'm on one of the National Research of Ethics Committees for medical devices as a patient rep, and amongst other roles that I do. And you might ask, like, if I was a biologist ending up as a patient rep and all these things. Well, in 2016, I was diagnosed with cancer, and that kind of was a bit of an explosion in my life. It upended everything that I had going on at the time. I was working in the States when I was diagnosed, and it did really, give me a lot of time to think about what I was doing in my life and what was happening. And when I was working in the States, I was diagnosed there, and then I came back to Ireland. So I kind of was a patient in two different areas, in two different systems. When I was going through my treatment, I realized that I had a lot of privilege as a well-educated person, as someone with a lot of connections in the research community, in the medical community. And when issues did occur during my treatment, I was able to call on people that were able to help me. And because of that, I kind of felt that I had a bit of a responsibility in order to make things better for people that might end up in those situations, but wouldn't have the connections that I would have, or maybe wouldn't have the opportunities. And it was through that, as I was going through treatment and I was recovering, I had to leave my position as a researcher, and I wasn't able to work for a good while, that I found a really nice event called the Patient Voice in Cancer Research in UCD. And it was through that, it really opened up a whole world to me around PPI. Because in my experience before that, as a researcher, this was back in the dark times when I was trained, that there really wasn't a lot of PPI involved. I'd really never heard of it before. When I was doing my lab work, I had never met a patient. I would have gone running the other way because I really wouldn't have known what to do, And it's true of a lot of people that you get into science, you're not really that into talking to people, maybe. You just want to sit in the corner with your microscope and, research your science. But what I really realized is that research is about people. It's not just sitting in a corner looking at it down a microscope. It's really about people. And that's by getting involved with the Patient Voice in Cancer Research, it really opened up a whole world to me that actually the research that I had been doing had been incomplete, that we were missing a huge part of it. And I guess PPI has kind of grown up in Ireland along with me, because now I can see that there's huge differences and we've come an awful long way. Another aspect that I guess I got involved in then was in training. So I was really interested in, very interested in the space of PPI. As a researcher in my background, I thought this is something that I need to get involved in, but I didn't really know what to do. And someone recommended a patient training course by the patient organisation POSI. So I was one of the first people to do that in Ireland. And that was fantastic. I learned so much about all the information they told us. But the main thing that I learned from that, and what I gained from that, was the connections with all the other people on the course, and the connections with the people in Ireland that are involved in PPI. And it was, sitting in a room as a cancer patient with 20 other people that have a variety of connections with maybe diseases or their carers or their patients themselves, and trying to find what we have in common, that we have so much that all our different experiences are different, but all these people in the room, they really wanted to make things better. And that, I think, is the power behind PPI, that there's so many people that want to bring their experiences forward to actually make things better for other people. I'm just going to take a break because I'm running out of breath here. Yeah, and so the thing with people, I suppose, when we're bringing people together, is that can get messy, really. And I'm sure there's people nodding here in the room. So you're dealing with relationships, you're dealing with people's emotions, with people's expectations. There's failures in research that we have to deal with. There's vulnerability of the people that come before you and actually bring their own experiences to you. And trying to bring all that together, that can be hard. And I'm really delighted to see things like the PPI Ignite Network and all the structures and training and support that's in place for researchers to be able to do this and to do this well and to have confidence that they can do it. And also for training and support for patients on the other side, so that they can come into it with the knowledge that what they're going to be able to say. And I think, Susie, you mentioned it earlier, so that people that may not be used to standing in a room like this can actually come in and bring their valuable experience into it, and it can be respected and it can have an impact. So I suppose some of what I was asked to talk about today was really the difference that I've seen over the last few years. And I think that is the big thing. You know, there's the enthusiasm, which is really necessary. There's the interest, but we need the structures and the supports to actually make that work and to be respectful of people's time, respectful of people's experiences. And I think that is what the network really, that's where the value is really coming through. I think Anna mentioned earlier about the funding, and that, I think, you know, if you want researchers to do something, give them some money for it. And that's completely true. But not only the funding, I think there's another step that needs to happen as well, is that this kind of work needs to be recognized for career progression in research as well. Because if it's not, then it'll be something that junior researchers do, but then it doesn't really filter up. And I think to give it the respect and the time that it needs, I think that's another step that's needed. Just to go back on something that Kieran mentioned earlier about the 3 pillars. Kieran, there you are. The 3 pillars, you had your listen, learn, and always ask questions, which I think is fantastic. And the work that I do in Cancer Trials Ireland, I'm the PPI coordinator there, and our committee has pillars that are very similar. But at the same time, when we were looking for new recruits recently, we were looking at what do people need when they need to come in. And top of the line was just your experience. That's it. The second was interest. You need to really, even though, you know, PPI, the structures there, we still need to be interested and have enthusiasm to get it across the line. And then down at the very bottom was any kind of scientific background, any kind of interest. You might have a little bit and that might help, but it's not needed. And I think they were some of the things that we really need to drive home for anybody that wants to get involved in PPI. It's really your experience and your interest. They're the things that are actually needed. And the last thing that I wanted to mention was that there's a phrase in PPI that's used a good bit, and it's called "nothing about us without us." And I think that really speaks to, you know, we can't just research about things with people without having them, you know, it's a right for them to be involved. It's the right thing to do. The other side of that then is that, and I think this comes back to my own hubris as a researcher back in the day, where I thought I just needed to research what was in front of me and not anything else, is that really knowledge is incomplete without the input of the patients and the people that are involved. That it's not just an add-on, it's actually part of it. And when we view it, that the knowledge that we have is incomplete without the people's input, then I think that we're going to get to a point where it's going to be truly respected. Okay, thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Sarah. And next up is Dr. Lucy Whitson, who is the program manager for the DCU PPI Ignite program here. And Lucy is going to be facilitating a conversation with Dr. Avril Kennan and Edel Murphy, looking at charities and researchers working in collaboration for societal impact.
Hi, thank you very much for that introduction, Martha, and thank you so much all the contributors so far today. It's been fascinating discussion and great to hear everybody's perspectives and everybody's experiences so much in the room. I'm going to hand over and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And we have Avril and we have Adele who are going to be this session's focus. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Thank you very much, Lucy. So my name is Avril Kennan. I'm the CEO of Health Research Charities Ireland. So we're an umbrella organisation for over 40 charities that have a focus on health research one way or another. And our job is really to support them in all their involvement in health research, including, very importantly, their PPI work, and also to represent them at a national level.
Hi, and I'm Edel Murphy. I'm the National Programme Manager for the PPI Ignite Network, which is aiming to create a shared voice for PPI in Ireland. And I definitely think today we're seeing that in the room.
Great, so I suppose the focus here really is on launch of the guidelines, looking at charities and researchers partnering together. I know from speaking with the two of you that the development of that is particularly interesting and everything within the guidelines themselves. I suppose if you might want to touch a little bit on how that topic and how that conversation began.
Yeah, so I'll start. So representing all these charities that have a focus on health research, it was I have the privilege of seeing firsthand the value that they add to the research process, and also the value that the researchers add to them. So, I mean, I think you two, John and Suzanne, set this up perfectly, actually, because you could really see the benefit that you're adding to each other's works. And I mean, you call each other Susie and Mitch, so let's get there. So somebody's going to make a movie out of that, I think. But we see the same thing with all our member charities, and Francis is there from Breakthrough Cancer Research, and Kira's there from the Alzheimer's Association. And there's just a real power in bringing those two different perspectives together. But it's also challenging. And while there's this huge number of resources out there now, Adele actually sent me this link to a website the other day with this massive number of PPI resources. There's actually very, very little in terms of how do you partner with a patient organization or another type of community organization. Very little out there on that. And the challenges, to give you an example of the kind of challenges we see, it's in terms of how we think about the impact from research. So while most people who are researchers get into it because they want to make a difference in some way or other, the day-to-day pressures of academia mean that the focus is often publications and collaborations and those kind of academic outputs. Whereas a patient organization, let's say, will fund research for one reason only. They'll understand that those outputs are a very, very important part of that process. But what they want is to impact lives. So there can be different perspectives, and then there's a lot of practical differences in how, or challenges in how we approach partnerships like that as well.
Great. It's great to get an understanding as to where that came from, because you can really see those different perspectives and experiences all coming through in the guidelines themselves. I suppose it'd be helpful to know a little bit about the workshops and the planning and the development of the workshops.
Okay, so this event, we scheduled it to happen. It was one of the first in-person events post-COVID. So even that was kind of challenging to think about at the time in our planning. But when we started to think about it, we focused first of all on the audience. Who did we want in the room? So obviously Avril has spoken there about the charities. So we knew we wanted charities, but what charities? And I think, again, where I was coming from, to me, there are so many different types of charities. So we had the small charities, maybe driven by one or two volunteer parents or people living with the condition, right up to the much larger charities who have large staff and, you know, a research department and an advocacy department maybe, and also some of those would be funders and everything else in between. So we definitely wanted a mix of charities. And then we wanted some people for the PPI Ignite Network, but not too many people. And we knew the funders were really key in this. So we contacted the funders to come along. And in the course of these conversations, the other group that we realized are so critical in this were the people in the research officers. There's research offices in all the universities and everything goes through the research office. So those people are really important. And I know there's one or two of them here together. So as we began to plan, we broadened out and really put a lot of emphasis on getting the numbers in the room right, so the different perspectives were together. And then the other thing we worked on was we developed fictional case studies, 4 different fictional case studies that the workshop focused on. And in those case studies, we put in some very obvious twists, but also some more subtle things. And each of broke them into tables in the room, and we asked each of the groups to look at the case studies and think about what might the funders' perspective be, what might the researchers' perspective be, and what might the charities' perspective be. And that really got the conversations going, trying to put somebody else's hat on your own hat, looking at the case studies. So apart from all the other nitty-gritty details that we all know about, and Linda in RCSI was brilliant at this, in the logistics of the day, they were kind of the 2 main things, the audience and the fictional case studies.
Great. And then I suppose what happened on the day, how did the workshop itself actually go?
Yeah, it was, so as Adele said, it was just post-COVID. And so there was actually a real joy in the room that day, because for many people, it was the first time they were seeing each other again. And Michael's nodding there, you were there, Michael. And there was, yeah, just a real, real buzz in the room. But what was funny about it was, and this was unexpected to me, is that most people had come because they wanted to get out of the house. And I know they were saying, look, I'm here, but I don't really know about this topic, or I don't think I've really got anything to add on this topic. And then as the conversations developed over the course of the day, I think everybody in the room realized that, first of all, they had very strong perspectives on this topic, but also there were a lot, they didn't know the other perspectives. And so there was a lot of kind of, oh, I never realized that. And, you know, things like, say, from the charity's perspective, how responsible you can feel for the community that you represent. And that if you're going to suggest that some of those people get involved as PPI contributors in a research project, for example, you know, there's that huge pressure that, you know, to make sure they have a good experience, and what if they don't, and also huge pressure just to say yes to things, but also really struggling with your resources. So yeah, anything to add there, Isabel, on the day?
That's great, and so much this is echoing what's coming through in the guidelines when you read through themselves in terms of the experience and the perspectives that are coming through and everything that happened on the day. I suppose, how did the guideline document actually develop from the workshop then?
So I think that was interesting. I mean, one of the things we really tried in the planning and in conducting the workshop was that it wouldn't become a moan fest, like we're all very good at giving out. So that was why the case studies worked well, in that it was kind of more abstract than your own personal experience of things going wrong. But when we wanted then to have something that other people could, you know, take from and draw. So we began to think about the guide. And I think the first challenge was to make sure it wasn't a negative document. It was very easy to list all the problems. And if the truth be told, I think that's where we started. You know, it was a lot of these are the problems people have, these are the challenges people have. So we had to think a lot about how we presented the information, and also with some of the challenges, what I found really interesting, and this is where the fun started, things that came through as challenges from the research, from the charities perspective. I was kind of, because I'm based in the university, I would have worked with a lot of researchers at various stages over the preceding number of years. And things that were a challenge for the charities, I could see the opposite and also a challenge from the researchers. So one example would be a big issue with charities is the researchers come at the 11th hour. And then from the researcher's point of view, one of the things that came from that is, well, there's only a 1 in 10, 2 in 10 chance that this is going to get funded, because that's the way funding calls work sometimes. And there was a reluctance among the researchers to contact the charities at all, maybe, because they didn't want to raise false hope until the funding was secured. But then the charities obviously say, well, that's way too late because you've all the, you know, main decisions made. So that for a lot of the challenges, there were two sides to the coin. So it was about how did we, in a short document, try and capture the essence of those things. So yeah, there was some really, really interesting things came out of it during the development of the guide. So there was a couple of iterations, which is why it took a little bit of time, and then we got some reviewers on.
Yeah, so any little bit of negativity that you see in that guide, she really made me work for. And hopefully people will forgive us for that, because, you know, we are trying to grapple with something that actually hasn't been talked about that much and is quite new, and there are challenges. Just the only thing to really add there is that we focused the workshop on what happens around grant application time, because that's kind of where everything comes to a head. But actually, when we were having conversations at the workshop, it was really apparent that, like everything in PPI, it's everything that comes before that and everything that comes after that as well. And so the guide kind of expanded out in that way.
Great, it's lovely to get the fuller picture behind that. And I suppose the important thing, always when you do work like this, you'd like something to come from it. I suppose from your perspective, what difference do you think the guidelines will make?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think just the whole process of developing the guide in itself was useful. And we got a lot of people to review it first, got more feedback on a document than I've ever gotten on a document. So that kind of already kicked some things off. And for example, SFI have made some tweaks to some of their funding calls on the basis of the guide already, because they kindly reviewed it for us. And one thing that was very surprising to me was that researchers, I was afraid that we were just adding to the work of researchers and saying, okay, here's another thing you have to think about. But so far, the feedback has been that actually that's really helpful, because I didn't know what to do. And then from our member organizations' perspective and the charities' perspective, what I'm seeing is a real sort of building in confidence around, this is who we are, this is what we can offer, and this is also what we need. Anything else from you, Adele?
Yeah, I think one of the other things that came from the guide, we teased out a lot about the difference between working with individual PPI contributors and working with charities. Now, we didn't bottom out on all the issues, but I think it really brought that topic to the fore, and the fact that they are similar, parallel processes, but that to acknowledge that there is a difference, as you go forward, and sometimes the individuals can be members of charities, and sometimes they're completely independent, and come in different ways. That was just something that maybe I should have mentioned earlier on. But I think in terms of impact, yes, I think it has a big impact already, maybe in the charities. I suppose one of the big things as ever is, have we shared it enough with the researchers? So, I mean, even in our own network, the 7 universities, 7 program managers, I think we have a piece of work to do to make sure that all the researchers in our universities know about it, and in the other universities that we're dealing with now as well. So there's still work to be done in terms of creating an awareness, and that's why we're here really today. Like, it's a great guide, but it's no use if it's sitting on a dusty shelf in the cloud somewhere. And I think in terms of immediate impact, it has had, I think, on the day, an immediate impact for the research office staff. And Dr. Emma Doris, who's the UCD program manager, and myself ran an online session with the Irish Universities Association, have a research officers group, and they meet monthly or bi-monthly or something. And we did a session with them about PPI in grant applications. And that was really influential. I had done one with staff in University of Galway back a few years previously, and it was a real eye-opener for both of us. And again, this one was very beneficial. So I think that was very good as an immediate impact. But I think a little bit like a lot of the speakers earlier, we have started, but there's still a long way to go in terms of creating an awareness, and even developing some of the thoughts, and trying to solve some of the challenges, which is a big one. But I think at least by calling them out, it's helping us all to think through what is required, especially to remove some of the maybe institutional barriers that are there. And I don't know whether we'd like to think we contributed to this, but one of the things that came up on the day was the fact that grant applications, if you have a charity co-applicant on board, that you were being asked to provide what was essentially an academic CV, which was grand for the likes of somebody like Suzanne or some of the other Professor Galler who spoke earlier. Excuse me. But for somebody who has worked in a charity, an academic CV doesn't make sense. So in recent calls from the Health Research Board, they're now looking for 2 different types of CVs. Tell me your academic CV, Professor Gearan, and tell me why you're a, appropriate either charity or PPI contributor partner. So I don't know if that's if we contributed, I think, Anna. But like, that's the sort of thing. I think as well, with the network, it is about making a contribution along with many other people who are making contributions, like Barrettstown, like Cancer Trials Ireland, that it is about changing the environment in Ireland, and no one group or organisation is doing that, but we're all kind of working together on it.
Love, it's great to see the impact from such a practical resource taking place already. I think that's all we have time for in this session. So I'm going to hand over now to Michael Foley from the PPI Ignite Network at Trinity College, who's going to give us some closing remarks.
Thank you very much for that. And it's such a treat to be in Belvedere House. I did my undergrad here in Pats, trained to be a primary school teacher here. And you only ever got called to Belvedere House if you did something very right or if you did something very wrong. I'm not quite sure which I've done, but I'm very glad to be here. What I'd like to do first is I'd like to thank Veronica and Owen and Lucy for the invitation. Lucy, it's great to have you back. What I would like to do is I would like to introduce my colleague and good pal and the other half of my work, who is Clodagh O'Donovan, and we're going to just give a little bit of a sum up of what's happened so far.
Thanks, Michael. You're very good. Yeah, it's been a fantastic morning, a real celebration of PPI, and it's lovely to feel the energy and the enthusiasm in the room here. Martha, you did a fantastic job emceeing, so thanks for that, keeping it all smooth, and own amazing organisation. Yeah, Professor Veronica Lambert started us off with a fantastic speech, which really highlighted, you know, the importance of equity and diversity and inclusion and access in our PPI work, and that was great. Professor Derek Hyo, the DCU president, gave a lovely welcome and really embedded the history of DCU and this amazing building we're in and this amazing room we're in, and talked about the future impact and that we are here building the future impact with the work that we're doing and putting people at the heart of our research. Deputy Róisín Shortall, who, by the way, was a recent recipient of the inaugural Trinity's inaugural Edward Kennedy Health Policy Award, spoke amazingly about, you know, recognizing the importance of partnership with public and patient involvement contributors to improve policy and practice. She talked about the profound impact. She talked about that idea of, you know, the doctor knows best, is that concept is dying, which, you know, is a good thing, and that patients are now playing such an important role in their own health management and therefore impacting all of our health management, because whether we are patients right now or not, we will eventually, at some point, if we're lucky enough to live long enough, we will be patients probably many times in our futures. So it's important for us to do what we can to make that impact now to improve everyone's experience. Deputy Shortall mentioned, and somebody, I think Sarah, you mentioned it as well, the you know, that quote, which I thought was brilliant, PPI is exploding. And I see that our jobs here in this room and online is to kind of light that fuse and continue lighting that fuse so that that explosion continues kind of getting bigger. I'm just going to really quickly run through. So Professor Sean Deneen spoke. He's the leader of the PPI Ignite Network, spoke about the network and its national and local partners and the importance of the work packages that the network are working on and the work that our colleagues are doing in the network, and that PPI is a means to an end, you know, bringing change through all of our different channels, which is great. Then we moved to, I thought, which was one of my favorite pieces actually, was that the kind of series of conversations that were had. Professor Pamela Gallagher in DCU talked to Kieran Porrig, and that was amazing. A conversation about collaborative spinal cord injury repair project. I learned a lot, so thanks for sharing that knowledge. Just about how that collaboration between your advisory group and the multidisciplinary team of clinicians and scientists and the IRFU Charitable Trust just made such a difference, and how it continues to make a difference. And how your relationships evolved throughout that project was really interesting. And somebody also mentioned about the 3 pillars that you said, which I wrote down. I just thought was brilliant. The 3 pillars of PPI for you were: we listen to each other, we learn from each other, and we continually question each other. And that's distilled it perfectly, which is amazing. So then the second conversation was Dr. Jean Salzberg and Colin Hughes and Scott. And Scott, I didn't catch your surname, I apologize for that. Both from Queen's. Scott is an honorary lecturer and a psychotherapist. And you mentioned that idea of, you know, once you're in, you can't get out, that, you know, you can check out, but you can never leave. And, you know, from what I can see, it's just as well, because you're obviously hugely valuable to the lecturing team there. You talked about respecting PPI's contributors' time and expertise by paying them, and that honorary lectures are paid, and that's as it should be. Yeah, and you know, that idea of modeling that equitable collaboration for your students is just so valuable. You talked about, Colin talked about epoch-changing impact, and that it's the right thing to do, and it absolutely is. So thanks for sharing that with us. Michael, do you want to take over?
Okay, and I suppose I wanted to just say thanks as well, as always, to Dr. Anna Cody for her unflinching, is that a good word to use? But your continued support and your accessibility to the network. And obviously I'm very excited because I, you know, care a lot about the quality of what it is we do. It's come up time and again, that feeling that we can't just be bringing people in. We have to give them a good, meaningful experience. We have to give them good, meaningful roles. And ultimately, we have to make the difference that they need to see. They can't have the next generation experiencing what they experienced. That's why they're there. That's why PPI contributors are there. And so it's great that during this, we've had an opportunity to really explore what quality looks like. And on the 17th, we will be launching the Quality Improvement Framework at our Provost, the Provost in Trinity will be launching that. So we're very excited about that. But that then will lead into a workshop where we want to convene PPI contributors together in order to talk about, okay, right, if this is what good quality looks like, what can we as PPI contributors do together in order to move that quality agenda forward? It was also great to see Sarah talking about the IPOSI training, and the fact that one of the wonderful things was the sense that, you know, you get into a room with other people and you suddenly realize how connected we all are. And that maybe that's an Irish thing, who knows? But at the same time, it's the hidden power, it's the hidden superpower of PPI about how connected we all are. And I was really glad that you said that things can get messy. I'm all for messy. Anybody who sees my desk in work knows that I am very much a proponent of messy. It's by facing messy and getting comfortable with messy that actually we get to change the world. We get to move on to whatever's next. And as always, as Avril said, that event was super. My head was practically lifting off my body with excitement at the thoughts of being able to reconnect in person again with this really life-affirming community. But again, we were there for a purpose. We weren't just there in order to drink gallons of coffee, which I did, obviously. But we were there in order to try and share experiences. And I would absolutely agree that people came out of there having heard things they hadn't realized, but also feeling that little bit more confident that we're in this together and we're going to move this forward. I just wanted to say a very quick thing, and my apologies if Adele starts to eye roll, but there is a reason why we wanted a festival. And I think a lot about festivals because I used to be involved in a festival. And we think a lot about festivals, and we have a word in academia about why we run festivals, and it's called heterotopia. It's where the world gets to turn on its head, where we get to do things we don't usually do. It's where the servants are the masters and the masters are the servants, and this is a tradition that is hundreds upon hundreds of years old. That's why we have a festival. It's an opportunity for us to make a version of the world, albeit only for a month, the way we want it to be, where everybody's talking about PPI. People are getting together as a matter of course. New people are coming into the community, and people who are already in the community, even those who are a bit jaded by the community, are hearing new voices and are getting new perspectives on things. But that can only happen if you come to the events. We really, really need you to be part of it. You're already part of it. We need you at these events that we're running. We need to be able to show the example that you are giving, the leadership that you are giving, and say, look, there's people who are already here. They're already waiting. You know, people are waiting to take your call, as they say on shopping channels that I don't watch. That people are already here, and that they're already doing this amazing stuff. Wouldn't you want to share time with these people? Wouldn't you want to be here? Wouldn't you want to make the kind of difference these people are making? So that's why we need you there. We need you at our events. We need you supporting us. We need to support you as well in order to continue to do the fantastic work that you do.
What a wonderful way to end. What an exciting day, a brilliant start to the festival. So thank you very much, everyone. Go forth and ignite the PPI message.